So now that we have you here, the moment we've all been waiting for, the question you never heard before, ever in your life, right here, right now, iPhone or Android, which one, life or death?
Android.
We're going to have some possibly unhappy listeners here. Why is that?
Well, I am a mix before we judge. I am a mixed ecosystem household. I have a Mac, iPads for the tablets, but Androids for the phone. And I have nothing against iPhones. They're great. I just have always used Android, and you kind of become a creature of habit.
How does that even work? How do you go? It's like all day you're spending with the Android, right? And then you go home and here's the other one. Here's the Apple. How does that work?
I think probably most entrepreneurs are really into, or many are using the Google ecosystem in terms of email, GDocs, whatever, and so it works nicely on my MacBook, as well as it does on a PC, as well as it does on my phone, whether it's Android or iPhone. So most of my time is in applications that work just fine across the two.
Okay, so then Apple's probably more like the leisure, do other activities when you get back. Is that kind of?
I mean, I'm working on a MacBook now, and I think also but most of what I do is just through the Chrome browser now. So it doesn't almost even matter, right? It doesn't really matter. Like, I like my MacBook because of the keyboard and the mouse, and like the human interaction, the human machine interaction is really dialed in. And I used a Dell, and it was just garbage. It was just like the software, the hardware, the keyboard, the camera was in the wrong place. Like, it didn't feel right. And the MacBook just feels right. But to be honest with you, it's like most of my work is just through a Chrome browser. Yeah. And so if someone were to build a machine that was as good as a MacBook in terms of the human interface, machine interface, then I would use that too. It's just I haven't found that.
All right. Good to know. Good to know. Everybody, John Renaldi. Be sure to check him out if you're not watching one of the video platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and you're on one of the podcast sites. Please go on jiobit.com. It's spelled, listen to this, JIOBIT.com. So Jiobit is the world's smallest and longest lasting location solution for kids and pets.
Yeah.
John Renaldi, it's a pleasure to have you on. Tell us a little bit more. What is a Jiobit?
Yeah. So I, fortunately or unfortunately, at the time, unfortunately, lost track of my son down in Maggie Daley Park, for those in Chicago, next to Grant Park, huge park for kids, parents, nightmare, a dream, a kid's dream. And lost track of him pretty quickly upon getting there. Thousands of kids, half an hour of not knowing where your child is pretty frightening and traumatic. Came back from that experience realizing that there was really nothing in the market that solved my problem of knowing where your loved ones were when they were that age. At 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, sometimes it's even hard for them to pronounce their names, let alone try to know where mom and dad are, or if they were to find an adult to help them, even to figure out where they lived. And so we decided that at that time there was a great market opportunity to develop something to solve that problem. And so quit my job and started it.
And at the time, was there anything else like out there that you try to beat? Was there a competitor?
Yeah. So the products in the market at the time were either big, bulky smartwatches. So these like big things that you'd go on your wrist. And they'd only last a few hours. So if you wanted to use them, what we found, at first I just bought all the current products before I decided to quit my job.
Try it out.
So I tried them all out. I was just a dad looking to solve a problem, right? I wasn't like an entrepreneur in the wings, just looking for that right thing. I was just a dad. And so I bought these big smartwatches to go on the kids' wrists that tracked them and they could communicate. And what ended up happening was, one, the kids wouldn't wear them because they were just too big. They would fall off or they'd switch around. They wouldn't fit on the wrist. of a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old. If you had a 10-year-old, sure, but nothing really that would work for that young age. Then I sent them to school with them, and they were constantly distracted. And so the teacher said you couldn't wear them. So I'm like, well, that doesn't do a lot of good. It can't be worn. And then they would lose their charge after, within a day. So we would be going out to a park, and I'd grab it and it'd be out of batteries. So I'm like, well, this doesn't really do the trick. The schools don't allow them in. They're too big and bulky. They're constantly out of power. And the apps, both on iOS and Android, were garbage. They just constantly crash and just total garbage. And so when I looked at that wasn't going to work. And then on the flip side, you had Tile. Many people are familiar with that. Bluetooth only. It tells you where the last time your phone saw something. So good for wallets and keys, things that don't get up and walk away.
Yep.
But not good for kids, because if I were to leave my house right now, it'd say my kids are home. They get up, take their bike out. Since my phone last saw the tile at home, it says your kids are home. When in reality, they're 5
That's
blocks.
the point. Yeah.
So I tried all of these things, was totally frustrated, and eventually decided to do something about it.
And going about it and making this happen, it sounds like you definitely had to go through some obstacles and loopholes, right? Because a product like this, I'm sure, as good as it is, also had some controversy with it as well, right?
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you had to go through to bring this thing actually to market?
Yeah. Well, first is my wife, who would be my first.
Smart answer.
And so before I was going to quit my job and actually jump into this, I needed to make sure I had the right support system. And I definitely, listen, I got 2 kids, married. There's a lot to lose. I now going through this, I wish I would have made the jump earlier in my life, because there's quite frankly, less risk. There's a lot of risk going into it when you've got this stuff and you're used to a certain salary, and paying the bills and paying the mortgage and whatnot. So yeah, the first kind of big step is just making sure your spouse is totally on board with what you're about to do, and understands the risks of going into it, knowing that hey, 8, 9 out of 10 startups are likely to fail. I hope that's not the case here. I don't think so, but that's what every entrepreneur says. So just go in assuming it will fail, and make sure that the experience we had was enriching and we took something out of it. I never got an MBA. I never went to get my master's. And so I looked at this as hey, I'm probably going to come out of this with as much knowledge as I would have going through an MBA, a better network, or as good of a network. And I've probably made some really great impacts along the way. And if we can make something of it and there's a great upside, so be it. If it totally implodes, I don't want to say it's fine, but I'm going to pick up and we'll be okay. And we went in with that mentality.
Okay.
So that was the first sort of hurdle. And then listen, like any journey, a bajillion other hurdles along the way, whether it's technology, market, people, you name it.
What about specifically when it comes to, because this is a tracking device, so specifically security and those kind of reasons. Have you had people come toward, at you, or companies, and be like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You can't be, encroaching on people's security or their privacy, blah, blah, blah.
I'd say in our customer discovery, so as we started talking to people right away, putting early prototypes, MVP, into the market to get feedback on, it was probably the number one or number 2 thing that a parent would say, which was, if you've made it so easy for me to see, how easy is it for somebody else? And that's a concern for me, because me as a mom or dad, especially at the time, we're talking when we started 2015, 2016, every other week, and even now, but IoT, the concept of IoT was still kind of new, of having these internet connected things in my home.
IoT, can you tell us exactly what that is?
Yeah, the Internet of Things. So, Nest cameras, doohickeys around my house, anything that's connected to the internet. In 2015, there had been the start of hacking these things by a variety of different parties that would put malware on them. They'd create botnets, all sorts of different things. And one of them, very notably, was a connected children's toy, like a teddy bear, that would record sounds. And as the child would talk to the teddy bear would reply, but the company stored all of the voice recordings of the children on an unencrypted and password unprotected site. So if you just knew the URL, you could get access to the entire file system of every voice of the child.
That's crazy.
Children. And so this was on the mind of modern parents
for sure
at that time. And so, yeah, I mean, it came up. And so we knew from day one, we needed to really make sure that we approached encryption, security, regulations. There is a regulatory body that is responsible for protecting information and data, digital information of children under the age of 13, called COPA.
Yep.
So we needed to make sure that we were not just compliant, but independently audited for that. And then we set out a goal after hearing all this feedback from customers around these concerns. We set out a goal to say, hey, listen, this security technology and this location technology should be as secure or more secure than anything in the consumer market, but would be good enough for using in the military, like military grade type of security and encryption, like mil-spec type levels. And that's what we set out as our goal right away to deliver that for our customers. Little did we know that years later, we'd actually be building location technology for the intelligence agencies and for the United States Air Force. So that ended up working.
That's kind of wild how all of a sudden, there you go, you're working on this huge project and you probably did not expect it to go that far, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that, or is that all secret and confidential?
Some of it is certainly confidential. And so I'll have to be careful on what I can say. But listen, as parents or pet parents,
yes,
you want to know and have peace of mind that the things that matter most to you are safe and secure and okay.
Yes.
When I can't be there. And so that same worry, if you think about my family being, my nuclear family, whether you're, a platoon leader or whether you're a commander, your people become that family too. And so there are similar worries and similar problem statements. Whereas if you're looking to understand where your family is and making sure they're okay, you want to know that, and you can't depend on smartphones. Smartphones have been hacked. There's lots of security issues with smartphones. So something that's fully controlled, that doesn't have any security concerns for them. And as you think about the things that I'd want to track in addition to personnel, can also be other important things that I want to know where they are. So if I'm my precious asset may be something that I'm pushing out the back of a C-130. And if I had a misdrop on that parachute and we can't find it, and that object was, small, but cost $100,000, I'm not going to look very good. And so I want to make sure that I have the peace of mind that even if I failed on my mission of that airdrop, we could recover that very expensive object.
So not too many of us, are able to work on a governmental contract, for example, and, get into that space. How hard was it to even get in there? Because I'm sure that had to be a very rigorous process.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, there's been a lot of work in the past few years by the Department of Defense and by others in the government space to make it easier to work with the government. And it's called the Small Business Innovation contracts. It's called SBIR. And what that does is it says, hey, listen, there are small businesses and startups that have really great technology that we can apply to our mission. But the industrial complex is set up that these contracts typically go to the big behemoths, the Raytheons, the Boeings, et cetera, that, by the way, we're probably ignoring some better technology that's out there because we're set up in this way. And so Cyber was created to embrace smaller businesses and allows a different way in through procurement and contracting that companies like ours can take advantage of and get cutting edge technology into the government, not just the Air Force, but other branches of the military, as well as other aspects of the government, in a way that is, quite frankly, the old way of doing business. Moves faster. You obviously have to be compliant to the basics and be operating in good faith, but allows you to move a little bit quicker, a little bit more nimble. And they partner you with people inside of the Department of Defense that are your counterparts. So it's been actually a very great experience.
Sounds like it.
Getting in through Cyber was a great way for any small business to sort of bypass the old way of doing things.
So anyone that has an idea or has a small business, they could just Google Cyber and find more about this?
Yep. SBIR. Just Google that. You'll learn all sorts of stuff about it. They'll have like pitch days where they'll have like Cyber pitch days. You apply to get in, you pitch, and you obviously have to have a product or a technology that could be used by these people, and they will give the market. They will say, hey, we are looking for, as part of Cyber, we are looking things to solve these problems, right? They will list this out. Like, we are looking for, rapid testing for COVID. We are looking for .
Yeah, especially right now.
Yeah, one of those is we want to track our assets. We want to track personnel. We want to track things. And here's why. And so we're looking for solutions out there that could do that. And so we married our what we're doing to their need, and now have been able to receive multiple contracts from Cyber.
So now, like, not just that you're getting probably audited by these children agencies, you got the government on you too, right? So now you're like super covered, right? You got to make sure everything I's are dotted, right? T's are crossed, because it's got to be a lot.
Which just gives, I think in a business like ours, you have to make sure you're not distracted. Right? In our case, we always make sure there are always dual purpose features and capabilities that we deploy. So if we're going to build something for consumer land, we always try to think, how could our business customers or government customers use something similar? If we're talking to the Air Force and they have a feature called return to base, which is an alert to bring people back to the base, we think of, well, how could we deploy that in a consumer setting such that a child could say, hey, I got to my friend's house, and have some sort of two-way communication. So we always try to make sure there's dual purpose. But the other benefit of having that enterprise side is, as you have security and as you build this encryption, those relationships allow it to give you some authenticity and credibility to validate that, hey, I actually did all these really tough security encryption things, so that you as mom and dad don't have to worry about it. There's not a lot of third-party certifications that you can say, like, I'm super secure. I don't know, like what there's not a lot of ways you can do that.
No.
You can obviously say, hey, I'm FCC certified, so I'm safe to use in a wireless way. Or I have, maybe UL certification to make sure the electronics don't start a fire. All these things are for other physical things that give you certification and validation. But for security and encryption in this country, we have a general Wild West that every company is saying that they're secure or whatever it is. And then all it takes is somebody to hack it, say, actually, it wasn't. You said you were all secure, but you weren't. And so, having, I think, the COPA regulation helps provide some of that, not all, but some. Having the work with our government customers certainly helps provide that to our consumer customers. And then also we have hired, and we didn't have to do this, but we hired a third-party penetration testing company, White Hat Hackers, to say, here, go nuts, try to hack our platform,
That's
our
cool.
software, our hardware, and see what you can do. And then we use those reports to partners and others to get them comfortable that, everything we said we're doing, we actually do.
Do you think, being so entrenched in this world of security, privacy, do you think that we're going in the right direction with that? Or as we get bigger, as we get more capable, more technology, that this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue?
It's going to become a bigger and bigger issue. California has started some regulations around Internet of Things protection and privacy and encryption for security. It needs to be at the federal level. We need to have uniform, regulations for consumers and companies, so that hey, I can sell my product in Utah, but not California. Like it create when every state has different regulations around encryption, and controls around security. That's not a good thing for commerce, and it's not a good thing for the consumer either. So there does need to be a stronger focus on instilling a minimum set of requirements to be able to sell a product. If you're going to store or transmit somewhat sensitive information, Nest cameras, smoke alarms, all these things, including things like Jiobits, there should be a minimum set of requirements that said this is as safe as you could expect. Like, anything can be hacked with enough time, effort, but you need to make it so difficult such that it's not worth their effort. And so many of these products that get released in the consumer market are just wide open, and it doesn't take any effort to try to hack them much at all.
So what you're saying is that we could be out for even worse times, like when it comes to hacking and all that, right? Because there's not as much security in place.
Yeah, I mean, so many of these devices are wide open. It allows nefarious parties to do botnet attacks. It allows them to steal information from consumers. Allows them to monitor, eavesdrop. I mean, you name it. These actors can do, and even to the point of being ransomware, to say, hey, look, I've been spying on your house. Do you want me to release this to everybody? I got some maybe unflattering things that are inside your home. These are all things that are very possible, and until we really focus on this, most companies do not focus on security day one. They only focus on security after they've been caught.
Yep. Common theme here in America, right?
It's a theme. No one really, or I should say, very few companies, and even fewer startups will take the effort, time, and investments to really, really, really button up and build out a strong security architecture. And they only do it after they've been caught.
And interesting point you bring up with the ransomware. Do you know, is that happening? Have you heard of any cases of that being used against people?
I have not. I certainly have seen, of course, ransomware on computers, on your personal machines. But it doesn't take too much of a stretch of imagination to think that that's on the horizon. If I've got ransomware to get into my laptop, and if someone is able to hack into my cameras in my home and be able to use AI and machine learning to filter through all the images and just find something where, somebody, an executive, somebody important, spanks their kid, and that's like, hey, listen, that's a parenting thing, but that might not be something you want the whole world to see, or whatever it is, right? Me walking around in my underwear, I have no idea, but there could be some unflattering things where they use that for ransomware. Just
Hey, you're bringing me back to Homeland. I don't know if you watch it, but I'm thinking exactly of a moment. You probably know what I'm talking about with Max. But yeah, this is great. When you talk about the government and now, letting every state kind of do their own thing, they're kind of doing the same thing right now with the whole, the elephants in the room, COVID-19, with what's happening across the entire nation right now. And, as we're recording this episode today, we are still, in a lock shelter in place pretty much across the country. Across the entire country. And what they're saying is that now every state's going to kind of do their own thing. How do you feel about that? Do you think things should still be delegated down to every state to make their own decisions?
Listen, I try to look at this through a couple different lenses. I've got friends and family members in areas where there are little to no infection rates inside of Illinois. Illinois is more than just Chicago. Being in this region, we think through that lens of Illinois and Chicago, like everything must be like this, but it's not. There are many areas in the state that have very little infections and have lots of distancing between them. They're on farms or rural areas. And even if they go to stores that are non-essential, there's 2 or 3 people in that shop, right? Like I'm going into Ace Hardware, there's only 4 people in here anyways. But if it's shut down, does that make a lot of sense? I don't know. Like, as long as I think you give some standard levels across the country, listen, we all have open borders. So, if we in Chicago as a region are able to control this virus and we all do a good job of it, well, if somebody lands at O'Hare from Spain or lands at O'Hare from Louisiana or wherever, it's not to say anything about those states are bad or countries are bad, but just someone comes in that we didn't control, now we're right back to where we started. So there has to be a minimum set of federal and national standards of testing and certifications and social distancing and what have you. And then there has to be the ability for municipalities, not just states, but even at the county or city levels, to adapt to that as it relates to the situation on the ground. I get both sides, but they both have to be there. There can't be all just states and municipalities, and it can't be all just federal government. There has to be both in place. And until we do, and by the way, I don't see this happening yet. But once we do have that, then I'll feel much better about opening up my business.
And being a smaller business, not a large corporation or anything, how is this affecting you? How have things changed?
Well, we have a product we've been talking about it. So of course our business customers are fairly unaffected by this. So our revenues are untouched from that. Fortunately, we also have a reoccurring revenue stream from our consumer business. And fortunately, we built a brand that consumers trust and love. And so
I'm assuming you have like a reoccurring monthly subscription?
Yes, correct. That's right. And so fortunately, a large percentage of our customers continue to pay those bills. Listen, our monthly reoccurring charge is not $50 or $60. It's $5 or $10 that's showing up. And so, now if this lasts for years and years, are people going to continue paying that? Probably not. But we're going to get the benefit of the doubt from our current customers. So that continues well, which is a great aspect of our business model. The fact that you can basically sell nothing but still have revenues coming in. But that gets to the last point is, you still obviously have to grow. And so if I can't sell new product and acquire new customers, I'm flat growth. If not, just have your normal attrition that you'd have regardless. And so our new product sales have been significantly reduced, as you would imagine for consumers. If your child is just with you by your side all day long,
seems like a luxury.
There's no need to track them because I'm not going into crowded places. I'm not going on vacations. I'm not, they're not going to school. They're not getting on the bus. And so, we are working on new features, new capabilities, new ways to position the product. I think we all have cabin fever right now. So as parents, we're trying to get out. So I think that does offer an opportunity for us. But listen, right in the short term, our revenues of new product sales are down significantly. And so it hurts in a big way.
Have you had to lay anyone off?
We unfortunately did. Yeah. So we have a large number of really talented customer experience folks on our team. And unfortunately, when you have an 80% drop in sales, that means you have pretty much an 80% drop of customers to talk to. Because most of our customer contacts happen within the first 2 weeks of product ownership. And so, you're in a situation where, your planned revenues and growth, you have a huge revenue hole, and you have then a work hole where there's just not as much stuff to do for some of those folks. And so, and then you're not out spending a lot of money on marketing. So, how can you have a huge marketing team if you're not necessarily out acquiring lots of customers? And it's by no fault of anybody's. But we unfortunately did have to adjust our resourcing. And fortunately now, with the PPP and other things that the government is doing on the stimulus, and the fact that our business is now stabilizing to start to rebound very slightly, but we've seen sort of the valley. we can now comfortably start to look at rehiring some of those people and bringing them back from furlough or laid off. And so we're starting to do that now. We'll hire back our first individual probably this week or next.
Oh, that's great. That's great news. Has this affected though temporarily, like company morale and stuff? Like, did you have to do a lot of upholding at the moment?
For sure. I mean, and rightly so. Listen, I mean, in a small business and many businesses, you become, the lines between personal and professional have become blurred for many people in the workplace. And these people aren't just their coworkers, they're their friends. And you can't help but be affected when you see a friend that's impacted by this in a real way, regardless of unemployment or not, right? Like, yeah, financially they're okay, but like there's still a huge emotional impact that happens that you will be empathetic to. So it's very understandable that impacts them. We've tried to be as gracious and compassionate as we can be, given the circumstances, paying for people's healthcare 100%, for the next 4 months or so. We're doing what we can. But we also can't, the business can't die. Otherwise, now we've affected all of the employees' families. And so, it's very tough calls to make. Again, you try to be as compassionate as you can, trying to stay in contact with those people, trying to hire them back as the company financials, as the market dictates. And I spend now a vast majority of my time on, talking to our employees and doing what we can to help them. I mean, listen, they're not just had layoffs and the friends got affected, but they're now working from home when they weren't expecting to. They have to be teacher and principal and coworker if they have kids. Mm-hmm. They're stressed out about all the information that's coming out on a daily basis of death. They are dealing with a spouse that might be worried about their job. I mean, all of these things are happening at once. Of course, people, whether we laid people off or not, morale is probably going to be a problem. Yeah. And so I, am probably 75% therapist.
Yeah, no, that's something I could relate to right now too. And what they say, and it is always the case, during moments like this, especially anytime we go through severe downturns, opportunities come about. Sooner or later, you have to start looking at what could come about and what changes we can make and adjustments in our lives. And what do you what advice do you have for these individuals? It doesn't have to be specifically your employees, but like anybody laid off right now. Like, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I'd say that I'm fortunate that I've been through the .com bubble and burst, and I went through 9/11 and 2008, the Great Recession. So now this is definitely unique, but we know eventually we will come out the other side and things will return. We don't know when, but it will. People, I think, that haven't gone through some of those downturns and haven't just experienced it themselves, there's a little bit of like the end of the world feeling, like, oh my God, the weight of this is so heavy. But if I remember, the weight of 9/11 was so heavy, like it felt different but similar, and that there's just that fear, and you focus on the numbers, and you're just like in this fear zone. And eventually you work your way out of it. And it takes humans, I think, a while to just adjust to the new situation of the new normal that we always hear. But that's true. Like, you eventually adjust to what's going on. You're like, okay, we're going to have to live in this world where we have to socially distance. We're going to have to figure this out. And so now how do we adapt a growth mindset to just make the best of it? How do we move forward? Because just dwelling on the fear is destructive. It can bring about depression. No one wants to do that. And so I think it's getting ourselves into that growth mindset, totally acknowledging what's going on, not minimizing that, but how do we adapt and how do we not just survive, but thrive as humans, as family members and employees and companies, given the new set of circumstances that we're in, and understanding and acknowledging that there are things that are probably not going to change in the short term. And so how do we figure that out? You
think this is gonna get it, kind of give in soon, you think, or do you think are you on the pessimistic side that it comes back stronger and worse in the fall, winter months?
I think a lot of that's going to depend on how we react over the next couple of months. And so I think the answer that I think is I don't know yet, because I don't yet see how we're going to be putting in place processes, controls to make sure it doesn't happen.
Right.
So if we just open up everything and everyone goes back to work and we just forget this all happened and don't learn from it, yeah, I'm really pessimistic. If we open up in a controlled way and we have testing in place where, I believe we have to get to the point where we can have daily or every 48-hour testing. And if that's the case, it's like a Starbucks drive-through where I'm getting my coffee and my test at the same time. I believe it's a passport. It's, hey, I tested negative this morning. I can get on the CTA. I can get on the Metro. I can go to work. Cool, right? And if you can ensure that, and you can ensure we're still socially distancing, we can ensure that same practices are applied through TSA security when we travel in the airports. There's I think opportunities for us to solve the problem and control it in a way that doesn't come back anyways. But if we just think that this won't happen and we just open up and we all just go to the airports and we're all just up on each other and we're high-fiving everybody and licking our fingers and touching each other, we're right back here again in 6 months. And so that's the worry I have, is people don't think about that and we don't put in the right investments, and companies don't do this. I think governments will say one thing and companies and business owners will say another. If I have a business and I bring my employees in and one of them gets somebody else sick, they're going to organize and say, hey, my company isn't doing enough to protect us. As much as we want to say governments, will say we want to open up for business, when people start dying and people start getting sick, you can't hide from that. You can't wish that away. And so when that happens, and you're already starting to see some of this with Amazon employees, grocery employees, when they die, they're going to be like, what are you doing to protect me? And if the company doesn't do anything, employees will organize and they will force those companies to do something about it, regardless of what the government says or not. And so I believe companies will have to really drive a lot of this for their employees. And you're seeing people like Max Levchin say some of these things as well, saying, hey, what are companies going to do here? What are we, forget what the government's saying. What are we going to do about testing? Do companies need to start investing in testing?
Yeah. This is a very, very interesting way of looking at it. No, I definitely appreciate you giving that answer, because I think it's going to be a wild, hectic next few months of we're not really sure what's going to happen 100%, because keeps things changing, keep on changing every day.
Yep.
But yeah, for everybody tuning in and you want to learn more about Jiobit, about John Renaldi himself, be sure to check out jiobit.com. That's JIOBIT.com. As well as John Renaldi. You can go on LinkedIn, and you're on all major social media platforms as well, right? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I saw you. But now we're officially through round one and part one of the show. And we're moving on to our listeners' favorite segment of the show, where we're really quickly just going to learn a little bit more about you. But for this round, Miro is taking off. Miko, his evil twin, is going to take over.
Welcome to the round with no name, because they're all taken.
Aha.
Well, if you were really his evil twin, you'd have a Sox hat and a Cubs hat.
Yeah. Oh man, that is good. I'm gonna have to take you up on that offer.
You have one with a bill that says Cubs, and then you just turn it around, and it's a Sox.
That'd be really bad. Whew. I don't know. I don't even know if Miro would like that. But Miko is here now, and we are moving on to our favorite segment of the show. You're gonna have 5 seconds to initiate an answer for every single question I give you. We just want to know more about you without you thinking about it too much. Okay. So without further ado, here we go. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book would be Devil in the White City.
Oh, my fiance is reading it, actually. She's been stuck halfway through that book for the last 3 years, but She's still reading it. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I don't know if I have a favorite movie, but if I had to think just really quick, the first one that comes to my mind would be Aliens.
Ooh, okay. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good time right now to watch that kind of movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stranded on an island for the unforeseeable future. You can't bring a person, but you could bring one thing. What do you bring?
A laptop with a data card or some sort of satellite data, something where I have access to the internet.
And solar powered battery.
So
right?
yeah, solar powered battery.
There you go. How do you drink your coffee?
With a little bit of cream.
A little bit of cream. Nice and easy. If you had an unlimited amount of money right now, you can start up any business you wanted, not your own. What would it be?
Something around education. Something for kids that are in underprivileged areas, don't have access to teaching and great education.
What is your favorite app?
Wow.
Yeah,
probably.
a lot.
This is going to sound super boring.
The weather app.
No, even more boring. My wife has asthma, and so we have to make sure our internal air is very clean. With these air purifiers behind me. And so I also have, let's see, right there against the wall, a little air quality monitor.
Okay.
And so I'm constantly checking our internal air quality.
Nice. Not bad. Well, no, that's a serious issue, but yeah, definitely, probably an app not too many of us know then, right?
Right.
Do I personally push my wedding that's supposed to be this summer in July to next year?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's it. Miko is out. But Miro is back. All right. So you survived with Miko, the evil twin. He didn't go too much on you today. He just you were actually good. You answered everything pretty quick. He didn't have to get rowdy and loud. So we survived. You survived. Everybody, John Renaldi, check him out at Jiobit.com, Jiobit.com. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time, being here on this episode here of Boss to Boss. The mic is yours if you have any closing thoughts.
No, thanks for having me. And, I think that everyone needs to really think, everyone that's listening, really think about what they can do, I think, to get out of the fear zone and into the growth mindset, knowing that what we've got in front of us isn't going away for a while. So let's all make the best of it. But being safe and thinking about maybe the other people that might be more affected than us. Whether we've got parents or people with asthma or other types of things. So just let's be mindful about our neighbors and friends, even if it might be not affecting us.
Oh yeah, especially asthma right now. I didn't even think about that. So that app is more important than ever too.
Yeah. No, we're more worried.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again for being on, and definitely looking forward to the future and to getting through this thing together.
Awesome.
That is all for this episode of Boss to Boss. Your next step is to visit bosstoboss.com, where you will find proven techniques followed by professionals to help you make that next step. Again, that is boss2boss.com. And remember, the time is now.